Hello. We are doing some function notation today. It might be a little bit of a review. It is from 1A, but we are going to just briefly go over it and then do some practice problems together. You are used to, for the most part, seeing equations that look like this. Y equals 2x plus 1. And sometimes you would be given the equation and then told x equals 2. Evaluate the equation, right? So you would go, okay, well, y equals 2x plus 1, so you're going to plug the 2 in for the x, and then you're going to solve it, right? So you'd get y equals 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1, and y equals 5. So all we're doing is we're just changing the notation. So we're not going to write a y anymore. We're going to write f parenthesis x. And the way that we say that, or the way that we read it, is f of x. And so when you see that, it means the same thing. It's just called function notation. It's another way of writing it. All right, but notice how I have the same equation there. So then what you're going to do is you're going to evaluate the function based on what they give you. So if you take a look at number 1, it says find f of 2. Notice that the 2 is in the same place as the x. So technically x is 2, or we're going to replace x with 2. So actually, it's pretty much what we just did in the previous example when I did that little refresher. So you're going to say f of 2 equals 2. Now, instead of the x, I'm going to put a 2. And now I'm just going to evaluate that. Well, 2 times 2 is 4 plus 1. So f of 2 equals 5, which is exactly what we got when we just substituted in x equals 2. It's the same idea. In number 2, we're going to use the same equation as we just did, but I have to find f of negative 1. So this time, I'm going to plug in a negative 1 for x, but I'm going to follow the rest of the same steps. So I have f of negative 1 equals 2 times, well, now I'm going to plug in a negative 1 plus 1. And now I'm just going to evaluate. Be careful with your negatives. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. And bring down my plus 1. And then I'm going to do negative 2 plus 1, which is negative 1. On number 3, I now have f of 7. Notice the 7 is now where the x goes. So I'm going to do f of 7. And now I'm going to plug in a 7 for the x. And now I'm going to solve or evaluate. 2 times 7 is 14. 14 plus 1 is 15. Notice on number 4, the only thing that's changed is what the x is. It says find f of negative 12. So now I'm just going to plug in a negative 12. Two times negative 12 is negative 24 plus 1. Be careful with those negatives again. Negative 24 plus 1 is negative 23. Number 5 says, given the function g of x equals x squared plus 3x minus 7, find the following. Now they're using a g instead of an f. It's the same exact thing. They like to switch between f, g, and h. They use other ones, but those are the most common. My equation is a little bit more complicated, but I'm going to do the same thing. So in part A, it says g of 1. It says find the following, and part A is g of 1. So I am going to I'm just going to write equals there, and now I'm going to plug in a 1 every time I see an x, because in my original I have an x there and an x here. And I'm going to put parentheses around it whether it's positive or negative, because when it's negative, it kind of messes it up. So it's good to be in a habit of putting parentheses around everything you plug in. So I have 1 squared plus 3 times 1 minus 7. When I solve this, I'm going to do my exponent first. And you can really just put the whole thing in your calculator at that point. And when I do 1 plus 3, I get 4. 4 minus 7 is negative 3. Now they want me to do g of 7. So again, I'm just going to plug in 7 squared plus 3 times 7 minus 7. So it's going to give me a 49 plus 21 minus 7. And I am going to put those numbers in my calculator because they're a little bit bigger and I want to make sure I don't make a mistake. So when I do 49 plus 21 minus 7, that gives me 63. I want you to take a second and pause and put in g of 0. Plug it in and see what you get. I'm hoping that's what it looks like when you plugged it in. And the nice thing about when you multiply 0 or 0 to an exponent, you get a lot of zeros. So when you evaluate that, hopefully you got negative 7 as your answer. And now I want you to do the last one, D, g of negative 2. Plug it in, solve it, and see what you get. Now, this is where the parentheses are important. Negative 2 squared is 4, because it means negative 2 times negative 2, which is a positive 4. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6 minus 7. And then when you evaluate that, you end up with negative 2 minus 7, which gives you a negative 9. For this next part, you are going to pause the video and you're going to do these on your own. Do you have to write out every word? No. But what you should write out for number 1 is the equation, because you need that. And then you need to write this and show your work. All right. And same thing for B and 2 and 3. All right. So what we're going to do is you're going to take a few minutes. You're going to work on this. And then Miss Schulte and I will reappear in real life and we'll go over these or ask if you have any questions. So pause this and work on it on your own. Please don't wait for us to go over it before you've done anything, okay?